I'm going to cover some things that you need to know to complete Lab 1.4, Sprites in Action. Specifically, the two things I'm going to talk about are how to change a sprite's costume, and then also how to use something called the broadcast functionality. So let's take a look at a very simple program here in Snap. And you can see in this program I have two sprites. I have two bats. And I'm just going to give you the heads up that both bats are identical. So for the time being, I'm only going to pay attention to one. Just know that the two bats are exactly like each other. And you can see that there's some very simple code for these bats. When they receive something called a command called fly, they're going to move 10 steps and they're going to change to the next costume. What does that mean, change to the next costume? So for each sprite, both this first sprite and sprite 2 here, they have a tab called costumes. And costumes are just their appearance. So far, you're very used to the default turtle costume, which is just an arrow. But in this case, I've added some costumes to these sprites. And specifically, the two costumes I added were a picture of a bat with his wings up and a picture of a bat with his wings down. And if I switch between those two costumes, it looks as if the bat is flapping his or her wings. So that's why I have those two costumes. To add your own costume, it's as simple as finding a picture and dragging it into the costume pane here. So if I said instead of wanting a bat, let's say I wanted a duck, I might just type in the word duck into Google, find an image of a duck, and maybe I would use that image there. So I could just, maybe I just save this image on my computer and then drag it into Snap. And now I have the bat can turn into a duck. One thing that I recommend is that you find things with transparent backgrounds. So some ways that you can tell, this has probably a white background, but some ways that you can tell or just identify things that have a transparent background is just when you search for something, type duck, transparent background. And then you'll find images of ducks that have what we call transparent backgrounds. And a transparent background just means that, actually you can see it here is perfect. When I load up this picture of a duck, you see it puts this checkerboard pattern. That just means that there's nothing there. So the image is literally just of the duck. That way if I place the duck on a certain background, I will see the background and not just a white square. So I generally say to find things that already have transparent backgrounds. That way you don't have a big square image. And it'll make sense as you start dragging your own images in. You'll be like, okay, I know why I need a transparent background. And if there's something that you want to, an image where you want a transparent background, we could just do that in Photoshop. So let me know if there's an image that you're trying to use that just isn't working right. So in this case, I have a duck. And in this case, some other scripts that I can use to change costumes. So you might see I'm going to use next costume. So in this case, it's switching between the three costumes. But you can also use the appearance blocks to specify a costume. So you might, instead of using next costume, you might say switch to costume, and then all your costumes have a name. So maybe I want to switch from the duck to the bat. He switches to the bat. Maybe I want to switch from the bat to the duck. He switches to the duck. So I can specify which costume my sprite is changing to, or I can just say go to the next costume, and it will just run through the costumes that I've given. And you can see here, I probably don't want my bat turning into a duck, so I'm just going to delete this one and leave him as the bat flying around. Now you notice something else that I mentioned. So once you have your costumes all set up, I said I was going to show you something called the broadcast command. So what is a broadcast? So you might see in here there's a hat block that says when I receive, and then there's something called a broadcast block. So over here I'm using the hat block that says when I receive, and that's waiting for a certain signal to come from a broadcast block. So the way that I've actually set up this program to get both bats to fly at the same time is you can see I've set both bats to receive a signal that says when I fly, when I receive the broadcast fly. And then in the stage, I wrote a small little script that goes, when the space key is pressed, broadcast fly. Now I can change fly to anything. You can make up your own broadcast commands. They can be whatever you want. But anytime either sprite 1 or sprite 2 gets the broadcast fly, they're going to move 10 steps and switch their costume. And every time I hit the space key, I send out the broadcast fly. So I hit space, it sends out the broadcast fly. Both sprites see fly and say, okay, well, I'm going to move 10 steps and change my costume. And I'm going to move 10 steps and change my costume anytime they receive fly. And you're going to see how this comes in handy later when we start controlling a lot of different things on the screen and we want them to respond at certain times. We can use these broadcast commands to control our sprites at different times. One other thing I should go over is that Snap has a lot of built-in sprites, and for Lab 1.4, it asks you to import specifically Dog2B and Dog2C. Well, where do you find these specific costumes? These are pre-built-in costumes, and if you just click on one of your sprites and then go up to the File menu, so I'm just going to keep the tab open in Costumes. You can see if I go to File, there's a Costume tab. It says Select a costume from the media library. If I pick that, it'll open up Snap's preloaded costumes, and you'll have to give them a second to load, but here they are. So there's different people that you can use, different shapes, arrows. These are all pre-built in. Here's the bats. And if I go down to D, I'll find the dogs. These are all pre-built in costumes that you can use with Snap. And again, you can import your own by dragging images in. That works too. But a lot of times you can make your game just by using some of these built-in costumes, and you can just click one to import. Whoop, there we go. I got two pairs of glasses here into your sprite, so you can go ahead and use those in your own programs. One last thing I wanted to show you was the broadcast and wait command block, which works a little bit different than broadcast, and basically it can be used to send a signal to another sprite and wait for that sprite to finish its own script. So for example, here I have my 2 bats, and I have one bat that I've written a little script for here, and it goes, when the space key is pressed, say the words, get away from me. And then it's going to broadcast the command fly, and it's going to wait. And then after it's done waiting, it's going to say thank you. So what's it waiting for? Well, when it broadcasts this fly command, I have sprite 2 here that's going to receive that fly command. That sprite's going to say the word goodbye, and then he's going to move and flap his wings away. And once this second sprite has run through its program, then and only then will the first sprite say thank you. So broadcast wait basically sends out a signal and waits for that entire script to finish before it continues on with its program. So let's see what happens when I do this. He says, get away from me. This guy flies away. He doesn't go too far. And then that guy says, thank you.